There's so yeah, just a couple of things. One is the CPA profession right now has a pipeline issue where we have a lot of very senior CPAs that will be retiring in the next 5 years.
So at this time when you work in public accounting, you do not have to worry too much about spending your time with your kids because they are now in like probably in high school, college already. So you have more freedom to do your career. Do you still, so now when you go back to public accounting, do you still have to work that many hours?
No, I don't. And part of that goes back to saying no and making important decisions, being very intentional about how you're going to spend your time. And so as a result of that, when I stepped into this new role, there are certain things for me that I've learned over time that I have to do. And one of the things is I would always start working over the weekends. And I realized the next week I was exhausted because I didn't take the weekend off. So now I force myself and I'm like, I am not working on Saturday or Sunday because if I do that, ultimately, even though it may appear like I'm getting some things done, at the end of the day, the next week, my performance is lower because I didn't take the time to step away and recharge. And so I've had more and more discipline. And the other thing is, I want to be a role model that you can have a very successful career while managing your hours, while also being a huge family person, which is what I am in my role as a dad. And so I think part of it is also, it's the circumstances, and I realize in the CPA profession, we have compression problems where because of tax deadlines, because everybody wants their audits done in the first quarter of the year, that creates significant workloads. But I think there are things that we can do as a profession ultimately to help that. But then also each of us as individuals figuring out sort of if I am going to have a peak workload, how do I handle that? How do I work through that? How do I make that work? Fortunately, in my role, I don't really have any of those peaks. I have project by project, or I do M&A work, so we may have an acquisition going on, so I've got to spend more time there. But at the end of the day, sort of I've realized over my career how to manage all of that and how to make that work where I'm fulfilled, my employer is fulfilled because I'm achieving what I need to do for them. And then also, most importantly, my wife and my kids are getting what they need from me to develop and grow and have the best life that they can.
Wow, Dave, I love it. You like have a great life work balance. You do so good at your work and also you have so much time with your wife and your kids as well. That's amazing. I want to look up to that model because it seems like for young people, young professionals, when they are still in the early career or middle career, it's still a struggle. They are still struggling so much to balance work and life. That's not easy at all when like, oh, I want to do so much at work to show that I can do this, to show that I have outstanding performance, but hang on, but I still have to take care of my life, I still have to take care of all the expenses, all the bills, and then all the family unions. It's just a lot.
It is. It is. And I've learned about myself, but I'll tell you, when I was in my 20s, I made a lot of mistakes. And that's just one of the things you have to learn about yourself is sort of, man, I did that and that didn't work. I don't want to repeat that. And I think with all of us, when you go back and now I reflect back over 30-year career, I mean, at various times, I've had to deal with anxiety. I've had to deal with depression. And so that life throws crazy things at you and you never know exactly what's going to happen. And I get it, in your 20s, it's like all this stuff is happening and you feel like, you have to make sense of it all, and you've got to start a family, you've got to choose a partner, you've got, like, there's all these heavy stressful things that happen. And I get that. And that is hard. And so you need to, in some ways, try to enjoy the ride as you go through that, but learn about yourself as you go. What is it that is making you happy? What is it that's not making you happy? Because that's different for everybody. Some people, I want to work in a major company and I want to work with a huge brand, and that's great. And there's other people that, I don't really want that. What I'm going to value in my life is different. And that's one of the things that I love about Anders is that we're trying to be a catalyst for everybody, whatever your definition of success is. And I think that's one of the super important things that we do is we try to figure out how does our client define success? And it's different for everybody. So as you work through those difficult years of your 20s and you're learning about yourself, just know that, I mean, I'm a perfect example. I stumbled, I made mistakes, I dealt with anxiety, but, it all worked out okay. And, and I've had a great career. I've had a great, I'm totally blessed with my family. So, sometimes it can be discouraging and it can seem chaotic, but don't give up faith that where you're going is worth the destination and all the struggles that it may take to get there.
Wow, Dave, these tips are so invaluable for my audience. I hope they will learn so much from this discussion. We talked so much about this profession. I just want to know some other fun side of this story. Dave, what do you do for fun to just enjoy your time, to de-stress after all the stressful, busy time at work?
And so yeah, I'm happy to share that with you. And there's actually I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a guy named John Garrett, and John wrote a book called What's Your And his premise is that that's great that you're a senior tax accountant at this organization, but you're more than that. You're a senior tax accountant, but also you sing opera on the weekends, or you're a woodworker and you build, or you assemble bikes and you give them to charity, or like everybody has these things about them that make them special. And so John Garrett wrote a book, What's Your that kind of explains all those concepts. And I read it. And back in the 90s, public accounting wasn't very open. It wasn't very welcoming. Every day I wore a suit, and, I wore a white shirt and a tie. And then on Fridays I could wear a blue shirt. I mean, there was no room to express your individuality. And John Garrett, he came through a similar era. He was also in public accounting. And his focus is on that And so for me, my is that I'm a huge music guy. And so I don't produce music, I consume music. But I love music. It makes me happy. And I've used it as part of my business life, in that when I started developing relationships and I started trying to sell, part of what I realized is I have to connect with people. And then I realized my love of music will help me connect with people. And so when I sat down to interview somebody in my, if I was doing audit or whatever, I'd find out about them. What makes you tick? What music do you like? And, I love Earth, Wind and Fire. I love, and so as you learn these things about people, I was able to work that into how I sold. And so I think that helped me be more successful. But the thing that I really love is I love live music and I love concerts. And one of the things that's happened as my kids have grown older is that now we can go to concerts together. And when my kids were younger, I tried to introduce them to different types of music. Some of them took it, others were resistant, but now they've all kind of found what resonates with them, what makes them happy. And so we're fortunate enough to share that together. So we'll go to shows together and we have fun together. And I think my kids, there's a lot of people that are very jealous of my kids because they have a dad that they can go to concerts with. And we can hang out and spend time together, really care about each other, and find something that we all enjoy and share it together. And so for me, there's nothing better than that, when I can do something and do it with my kids and or friends. I think the energy of a live concert is unmatched. I love sports and I love sporting events, but when you're at a concert and you've got however many thousands of people all connecting together, it's a pretty amazing feel. So that's my is sort of the music and the concert side of things, and my family. Those are the things that really make me tick and make me happy.
You such a great dad. I love that. Oh my God, your kids are so lucky to have you to guide them through life lessons and then also enjoy all the life moments with them as well. All the fun, all this concert, all this music. That's awesome. It's just amazing. See, being a CPA is already not challenging, and being a dad is also very challenging as well to maintain in this profession. You are doing both jobs so well. You're amazing. Thank you so much for everything you are doing for this profession, and also to create a model for people to look up and say that yes, Dave can do that, I can do that.
Yep. And actually, Rosey, there's one other things that might be helpful for your listeners as well. So I was a guest. I was asked to be on the Young CPA Success Show, and they posed a question to me, and the question they asked is, do you think now's a good time if you're if you're in high school or college, do you think now is a good time to become a CPA? Why or why not? And I thought about it and I answered and I said, well, actually, I think today is the best day ever to be a young CPA, and tomorrow will be even better. And so they said, great, come on to the show and let's talk about it. So as I prepped for the show, I started writing down all the reasons why why I'm so excited about the future of the CPA profession. And at the end of the day, I ended up making a top 10 list. And if you're as old as I am, you remember there was a guy on TV, he's still around, David Letterman, and he had a late night TV show, and he did top 10 lists every night, and they were hilarious. So I took I put it into the form of a top 10 list. And so when I did the podcast recording, I went through it as a top 10 list. And so that's out there. It's on YouTube. So, it was the top 10 reasons today is the best day ever to be a young CPA. So if you just search that, Dave Hartley is my name, search that as well, you'll find it. And so we did a video recording of that as part of the podcast. And then I ultimately turned it into an article for the Missouri Society of CPAs and have talked about it quite a bit. So I think your listeners might find that as a valuable resource, because when I go through and I talk about sort of, the reasons why I think that the CPA profession is a great place for people to be, and for younger people as they're looking at different options, to consider why the CPA world might be the best fit for them.
Now you make me curious about those 10 reasons. Can you just share with us a few reasons out of that list?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things. One is the CPA profession right now has a pipeline issue where we have a lot of very senior CPAs that will be retiring in the next 5 years, and the number of people coming into the profession can't keep up with the number of departures that we have. So as a result of that, that makes you as a young professional extremely valuable, because there's not a lot of you. And so that makes your career, firms are going to be willing to invest in you because you're a very valuable resource. So I think that sets people up, for the future, for future success. Another one would be, it used to be back in the day that, when you did an audit, you physically had to go to where the audit was, and you had physical work papers, and you had to carry the physical, work papers to wherever you went. And now with the advent of technology, and then now with remote work on top of it, basically you can be a hugely valuable professional from anywhere. So for example, let's say that you become an expert on coffee shops and you learn how coffee shops work, and you become a financial advisor, a virtual CFO for coffee shops. Well, in your local community, there may be, sort of 8 to 10 local coffee shops that you could advise. So that's your addressable market right there. When you think about, man, what if I had that skill set, but I could deliver that service virtually to any coffee shop anywhere in the country? Because I know how coffee shops make money, and I know what levers they need to pull, and I understand the finances, and that makes me a hugely valuable advisor. Now you can do that from anywhere. So even if you're you're in a small town somewhere and you don't have any coffee shops, but you've learned that skill because of what you can do now with all the remote technology, you can be a great advisor to coffee shops anywhere in the country. So those were a couple things that I called out. But when you go through that whole top 10 list, there's a number of things in there. Another one I would call out is that the CPA profession has evolved significantly in the last 3 decades that I've been involved. And I look at the willingness and sort of the tone of the profession now. Back then, it was very strict, very regimented, and you really couldn't show who you were. It was very stifling. Now, when I look at where we're at, and I as a leader try to encourage, I want people to be themselves. I want them to be professionals and get their work done and get the outcomes that we need and that our clients need. But I also want them to feel comfortable and have the best life and the best employee experience possible. And that comes with us setting the tone of wanting people to be individuals and bringing their true, authentic self to work, not some picture of what they think I want a professional to be. I want them to come and bring their raw materials, and then together we'll mold it and help people improve and make them better, but we'll all have fun along the way. And that I think is sort of a thing that all of us that have been in a profession for a while, the CPA world is really, a mentorship profession where you help the next generation come along, and you teach them the things that you've learned along the way. And so I think for all of us to help and really, focus on developing these skill sets in these younger professionals, that's an investment that I'm willing to make. I know tons of others are willing to make. And so there's a lot of programs where we're helping mentor CPAs, students in college that are trying to, figure out the CPA, sort of how's that path working. Well, there's a lot of resources that are out there that will help you with that. And there's also a lot of people that are willing to help you. So if you reach out for help, I think you'd be surprised how many people will actually help if you ask them for help.
That's so true. You just need to speak up, and you will be surprised how many people will respond to you. So it was my own experience as well, that I was so nervous. I was like, oh, that person is so busy, but I would like to ask for some advice. And surprisingly, that person got back to me like so quick, and was like, wow, okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, and once again, that's an example of a way to stand out, because there's not a lot of people who are proactively being intentional about trying to do that. And when you do that, it sets you apart. I was actually just earlier this week, I was at the Digital CPA conference, and there was a student that came into a big room and went around and started introducing himself to different groups of people. And I remember thinking, wow, that takes a lot of courage for somebody to do that, to walk into a room where you don't know anybody, all these established professionals, and for you to walk in and just, start introducing yourself. I'm like, that's tremendous. And I think what that person found is that all of us were welcoming. And it was like, that's awesome that you're here. Tell us about what you're doing, where you're going, all those types of things, because we want to be a part of that success story. And if I can inspire someone, we've had some events come in, and I was talking with some students who were in their third year, and they were starting to crack under the load of intermediate 1 and intermediate 2 accounting classes. And I told them how it almost broke me. And don't let it break you. You will get through this. And I encourage them. And now that it's the end of the semester and they've been successful, now to have them reach back out to me and say, man, I really needed that boost of somebody that could help tell me it's going to be okay and give me some tips on how I can navigate this. And I think what your listeners will find, if they reach out and ask for help, they will be very pleased by the response that they get. It may not come from everybody, because we do get busy, but I think what you'll find is there is a lot of support out there for helping other people be successful.
That's true. I like your story about that student walk around the room and introduce himself. Because last month I went to a conference. It is AICPA Women Global Conference. And then at the last section, I was all the way at the end of the conference room. How can I make people remember me? Like, I was super engaged during the conference already, but it is the last section. And so during the section, the keynote speaker said that try to raise your hand as high as you can. People normally just sit and raise their hand. I was all the way at the back. I stood on the chair and raised my hand so that speaker could see me. And then at the end of the section, when they have Q&A question, I would say that some background is that in the previous section before this final section, we talk about being visible. You need to make yourself visible so people can see it. I would say I cannot just raise my hand and stand on the chair and raise my hand at the end of the conference room. People will not be able to see me. So at the end of the section, I walk all the way to the front, raise my hand to ask the question. And so before I ask the question, I stood up on the chair. And then I look around the room, introduce myself, and then I start asking the question, because I said that because at the beginning of the section, you mentioned that you asked to raise your hand, and I was all the way at the end, you couldn't see me. Now I was on the front. You could see me now on the top of when I stood on the chair. But yes, it's important to make yourself visible, and is significantly important when you may feel nervous, you may feel scared at the beginning, but once you did it, it felt amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It felt awesome. People came to you and say, wow, Rosey, nice job. Wow, Rosey, How could you do that?
Yeah, and it's similar. You know, we when I talk to people about giving presentations, because they're like, "Man, you're a natural presenter and you're so good at it," and I'm like, I haven't always been good at it. When I started, I was having to present other people's material, and I felt like a pretender because I'm just like I'm pretending like this was. But then as you get further in your career and you have things that you can actually teach people and you can show people, then you become much more confident. And so much about presentation skills is just practice and repetition. And as you do things, you start to figure out and learn what works for you. Like for me, if I'm going to give a presentation, I am in that room early and I go up on the stage and I look around the room and I get familiar with how bright are the lights. Can people hear me? Is there anybody that I can see that I can interact with? And I don't use a handheld mic because I talk with my hands. And if I use a handheld mic, it's a horrible experience for the audience because I'm loud and then I'm soft. And so I always use a lavalier mic. How did I just learned that over time? One time I used a handheld mic and it was a disaster. So I'm like, I need to have a lavalier mic. So all of those things, it's about reps. It's about putting yourself out there and building confidence. And it didn't always work. And I failed along the way. And that's going to happen. And that's okay. The bigger thing is resilience and getting up and keep getting better every day at what you do and making yourself a better person and a better professional and helping others around you. If you do that every day, at the end of your career, I think you're going to be able to look back with a big smile on your face.
I love it, Dave. That's so true. I love it. All the advice you provide during this interview, I believe that my audience will learn so much from your journey, from your stories, also from your experience as well. Before we end this podcast, I know we talk so many tips and advice, but if you can summarize to three main tips that you can give to young professions in these accounting professions, what are those three main tips that you could provide?
Well, I guess one would be early in your career, you think it's about your own individual skill set and your own technical competency. Recognize pretty early on that that's important, but what will ultimately drive your success is everything else. It's all the small stuff. It's the ability to communicate. It's the ability to relate to people. It's the ability to think strategically. That's going to become more important as things get automated in today's world. And it's less about doing the work and it's more about the strategic and the decision making, the ability to communicate. That's going to be a huge skill set for the future. So I think that would be one of them. The other thing I would be is you got to embrace technology. It is part of our future. AI is not going away. I mean, it's already been with us a long time, but even where it is today, it's going to be embedded in so many things going forward. And if you're a fast learner and a fast adopter with technology, and you're working somewhere and somebody says, "Hey, we need somebody to go tackle this new implementation thing," and we don't, and you raise your hand and say, "I'll do it and I'll take it on and I'll learn about technology," that in the long run is going to that will help differentiate you substantially. The third thing I would say is try to have fun along the way, because you get sucked into this, and we all have to accomplish more, and I've got to be the, and we're in such a comparison age where on social media you see, and I'm even guilty of it. I see people, I'm like, "Oh man, look at what that person did and I haven't done anything." It's like, what are you talking about? You're doing so much, you're having such an impact. And so try to have fun along the way. Don't forget that this is a journey that we're all on together, and everything's not going to go the way that you want it to. And that's okay. You have to pick yourself up. You have to keep going forward, and just don't ever give up. Don't ever give up, because bad things will happen. And sometimes the best things happen after something bad happens, but you have to get up and you have to push yourself and you have to keep going forward. So those are the three things that I would call out. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of different things that I think are really important, but those are the three that I would call out at this point.
Thank you so much, Dave. I love those three tips. And I absolutely agree with you, those three tips. And of course, never give up. That's really important because you can go through difficult time, challenge time, but then that make you stronger and make you a better person, better version of yourself, as you mentioned during this podcast as well. But thank you so much, Dave, for the time today. And I appreciate all your time and the stories you share with us, and also the the CPA journey.
Yeah. And Rosey, one thing that I would add, I would encourage your listeners to connect with me on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/Dave Hartley, because I post about a lot of this stuff. I post about password managers. I post about, things that I'm seeing in the economy, different things like that. Because you learn from other people's journeys. And what I see other people doing inspires me and it gives me ideas. So I would encourage your younger professionals, your people that are considering the profession, connect with some people in the CPA community and see what they're sharing and see the things that they're working on and what excites them, and then figure out how that aligns with you personally. So, Rosey, I've enjoyed hanging out with you. Hopefully, this episode's helpful to your listeners. And yeah, and we'll drop the top 10 reasons today is the best day ever to be a young CPA. We can drop that in the show notes, I'm sure. So,
For sure. Thank you so much, Dave.
thank you, Rosey.